Is it too early to say that Sunday's a must-win for Matt Rhule? I guess. The man can't afford to lose. We'll talk about that, and I'll answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Be sure to watch the show and subscribe to the show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. You can also check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of the show. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, right down there for all the YouTube viewers, where every single Friday, like today, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show. And to participate in next week's edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag, if you missed out on this week, just be sure to @ me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's start off today's show by me giving my final thoughts before heading into the Week 2 matchup between your Carolina Panthers and the New York Football Giants, who had an impressive win on Sunday afternoon against the Tennessee Titans. I caught the last half of it on Sunday afternoon and was pretty surprised that Tennessee, who was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, and they did a lot of that without Derrick Henry, that they lost that game, where going back and watching more of it, they controlled the entire first half. The Giants' offense was anemic. There did not seem to be any sort of sign that New York could win that game. Tennessee didn't put them away in the first half, and New York came back. Saquon Barkley was running all over that Tennessee defense that ended up giving up 238 yards. Daniel Jones even stepped up and he made some plays with his legs and even some plays with his arm. Overall, the Giants offense isn't that threatening through the air. Sterling Shepard had a 65-yard reception. And outside of that, for that touchdown, there wasn't anything from him. Kenny Golladay, who is a ski mask all-star at this point in time, stealing money from the New York Giants. And really, Dave Gettleman robbed himself by giving him all that money. And we all know how Dave Gettleman runs things in an organization as their general manager. The Giants offensively really do not scare me. But here's the thing. Until the Carolina Panthers can show they can stop the run, especially against backs like a Nick Chubb, like a Saquon Barkley, it's very hard for me to sit here and feel all that confident in the Carolina Panthers' ability to win the game. I understand Matt Rhule keeps going back to, in the final 35 minutes, we averaged 7.7 yards per play, and that would have been third in the league a week ago had we done it over the course of 60 minutes. Well, the thing is, you didn't do it over the course of 60 minutes. And the hope now is that the Panthers offense can get going immediately, because apparently you can't depend on the defense to get off the field and to stop the run. And that is opposite of what Matt Rhule thought it was going to be starting off the season, where they wanted to lean on the defense, where they have primarily put all their draft assets and even free agent assets in to fix that side of the ball and have it to be the second best unit as far as team defense was a year ago. But what did we not see on Sunday? Didn't see any takeaways, didn't see any pressure. And at least they were better in the red zone, but they could not stop the run. So things that we had questions about going into the year was, would anyone opposite of Brian Burns step up? Didn't see it on Sunday. And Phil Snow spoke to the media on Thursday, the Panthers defensive coordinator, and talked about how Burns is going to see double teams all year. He's going to get chipped. There's nothing they can really do about that. He just has to fight through it. But on the other side, someone has to step up and provide a semblance of a threat as an edge rusher. The run. They were god-awful against it a year ago when they played against teams that were physical up front and really wanted to run it down your throat. They played one team so far this season, and that team, the only chance Cleveland could win that game, and as I told you all week ago, the only chance Cleveland wins that game is by getting takeaways, which they got the one turnover of the game, and by running it down the Panthers' defense's throat and controlling the line of scrimmage and time of possession, and that's what they did. So 2 things that we're concerned about defensively, they did not step up and do, and even the secondary. Key penalties from J.C. Horn and from C.J. Henderson that both helped Cleveland score in that game. 5 penalties overall on defense. that extended drives. So defensively, they have to be so much better against a Giants team where if you can take away the run and really force Daniel Jones to beat you, I don't see how that's going to happen with those receivers against this secondary, which is supposed to be the strength of the defense. At least that's what my opinion was heading into this season. Now, for Matt Rhule, it feels like a must-win. Now, if they go 0-2, we saw the percentages last year when they started off 3-0. The percentages say that you're going to make the playoffs. I did not think they were going to go 2-12 from then on. I came into the year talking about how maybe they could start off 3-0, but still my final prediction was 8-9 because of my concerns over Sam Darnold and the offensive line that played out, and they were much worse on the scoreboard as far as going 5-12 than I expected that they would be a season ago. So if Carolina starts off 0-2, the season's not over. You come back home, you get New Orleans, you get Arizona, who just got the doors beat off of them a week ago against the Kansas City Chiefs. But that offense, Kansas City, ain't what we have here in Carolina. And that quarterback in Kansas City is definitely not what we have here in Carolina, although I think there is an improvement in Baker Mayfield from Sam Darnold and from Teddy Bridgewater. And we saw that in the final 35 minutes of last week. And then they get a rookie in Trey Lance, who through 3 career starts hasn't looked all that great and lost to the Bears in a swampy environment that they had in Chicago a week ago. Like, season's not over if they lose. But the negativity that I sat here and talked with Josh Klein about is only going to be further amplified. All I wanted was to come in this season and for Matt Rhule to get off to a good start, just so I wouldn't have to listen to the Fire Rule crowd. They've been emboldened. They've been empowered by a performance on Sunday, for the most part, that was pretty meh. They weren't good. They deserved to lose that game. I do, though, give them credit for competing. And Phil Snow brought that up again on Thursday, like Matt Rhule did. They were encouraged by the fact that they did get things going, that they did compete. And at the defense, hey, it took them all day, but they got to stop to put the team in position to take the lead. Just couldn't get the second stop. And, of course, the referees and the unfortunate penalties didn't help in that situation. But Matt Rhule, if he wants to stay here in Carolina past this season, I would advise him to figure it out this week and for his team to be prepared and to not lose to a Giants team that is not going to be good. I get what the Giants schedule looks like right now. I'm sure Giants fans are talking themselves into a 4-0 start, but that is a rebuild. They are trying to tear that roster down. They being Joe Shane, who spent time here in Carolina to start off his career, then went to be the assistant general manager in Buffalo under Brandon Beane, him and Brian Daboll, the Buffalo pair of now New York, they were trying to break this down to the studs. They're trying to figure out whether they have a quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do with Saquon Barkley after the season, especially after being injured every season after his rookie year. That's not a team expected to compete. And the Carolina Panthers are a team in year 3 that the expectation always by then was supposed to compete. So you're supposed to be a competitive team. They're supposed to stink. Go out there, be more physical, don't make dumb penalties, and win the game. The Panthers have a better roster. But why I had to choose against them? They have not given me any reason to believe that when called upon, they can stop the run. And Saquon's healthy right now, and he looked damn good on Sunday. So I have my concerns, and I sure as hell don't want to be here on Sunday afternoon having a breakdown of the game and talking about 0-2 and then all the boo birds coming out and all the negativity on Twitter. And really, it's not even negativity. It's just God's honest truth. They're 0-2 for someone who was totally fine bringing back Rhule for a 3rd year. Going to be really hard to jump on board and want to go forward with that, even though, like, the best thing for the Panthers obviously is not to fire your coach after 2 weeks, because that just shows dysfunction in what head coach would want to come here if that's what David Tepper wants to do. But it's only going to lead us even further down the road of what I think a lot of y'all feel is inevitable. And certainly they start off 0-2. It would be hard for me to argue against that at this point in time. All right, let's take a quick pause here. Then on the other side, going to answer all of your weekly Friday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., Canada, and the UK. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just want to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday lifestyle. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. All right, let's get to it. The Weekly Friday Mailbag here on Locked on Panthers. Again, if you did not participate in this week's edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. But first, of course, be sure to click that follow button on Twitter, as I have plenty of thoughts about Carolina Panther games ongoing on Sunday. So if you want to see what I'm saying then, get a little preview of what I might say later on in the pod and what I'm saying throughout the week, go ahead and follow me there over on Twitter at Julian Council. Let's start off with Daniel, who asks, how does the Panthers offense get going early versus the Giants, and how does the D contain Barkley? He just rushed for 160 plus against the Titans and almost 200 yards from scrimmage. Starting off the latter question, how do they contain Saquon Barkley? Something that would certainly help for Carolina is if they can tackle. They missed 18 tackles on Sunday for 190 yards after contact for the Cleveland Browns, who averaged 5.6 yards per carry. They have to tackle better. There isn't the excuse that you have in college where you don't have a preseason. I do understand that plenty of these guys are in and out of the lineup, like a J.C. Horn, like a C.J. Henderson, Shaq Thompson, of course. But everyone else, man, they got opportunities to play in that first preseason against Washington. They were there for the joint practices and the preseason game. I guess they didn't play the second one against New England, but they were there for that full half against Buffalo. Like, they had enough, in my opinion, to be ready to go tackling wise. Like week one, it's going to be a struggle because you're first getting out there and really playing a full 60 minutes and trying to get back in football shape. I totally understand that. I just don't want to hear the excuses from a unit, especially that Matt Rhule was hoping to lean on there in week one while the offense figured it out. Now, for me, how do they get started? You would like to see Christian McCaffrey be a part of the early game plan. Get him the ball, get him in space, see what you can do. Also, find a way to get DJ Moore involved as well. I'm sure Adoree Jackson will be lined up on him. Maybe look at Robbie Anderson or also look at Shi Smith, considering that the Giants are down their number 2 corner who had an emergency appendectomy surgery earlier this week. So looking on the other side of the wide receivers, there should be opportunities. But really getting Christian involved, trying to get some quick hitters, maybe get DJ involved in that game. That's what I think the Carolina Panthers offense really needs to do early on, is establish a line of scrimmage, be able to run the football, hit Christian on maybe some of those choice routes out of the backfield, and find a way to get the ball into DJ Moore's hands and be creative. It doesn't have to only be throwing the football. Like I have said, every carry that's not Christian McCaffrey can be a wasted carry. Well, DJ Moore, we've said he's a running back who plays wide receiver, and we even kind of say the same thing about Christian McCaffrey can be a wide receiver who plays running back. DJ, rather see him have the ball in his hands because he is one of your top 2 playmakers on his offense than seeing Chuba Hubbard or Deontay Foreman ever touch the ball out of the backfield. So you want to do something like a jet sweep, put DJ back there. I'm cool with it. Be creative, get the ball into your 2 playmakers' hands, and give Baker some confident throws to really get in that rhythm. Because they didn't really seem to get in a rhythm on Sunday until later on in that game. And the Panthers can ill afford to sit here and wait. Now, they were lucky a week ago that Jacoby Brissett was pretty bad, because if they had Deshaun Watson or any capable quarterback in there, the Panthers would have got their doors blown off of them in the first half, and they would have even had no chance coming back in that game. All right, now we got Jake, who kind of asked a similar question, can the Panthers defense stop Saquon Barkley? I don't know. That's definitely the key to victory. Going on to Nathan now. How would you compare the hot seat of Matt Rhule to the hot seat that Ron Rivera was on before he turned things around and became coach of the year? Are we as a fan base too quick to jump ship on a coach before they even have time to prove what kind of coach they can be? If I remember correctly, the pitchforks were out for Ron and then became a beloved coach in the community. Love the show and love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you, Nathan. Also, Zan had kind of the inverse of that, saying, Julian, I've lost all hope. I have no more love to give to this team. It has drained me. We have a Matt Rhule problem, but even worse, we have a David Tepper problem. I agree with you on that. My question is, how many losses does it take for Matt Rhule to get fired? And is there anything to look forward to the entirety of the David Tepper owning this team? Can we even trust David Tepper picking the next coach? That's my point has been for a long time, that if you have a problem with Matt Rhule, totally fine. And if you want to get him fired, if you want him to be fired, okay, that's your prerogative. Just understand who's going to do the hiring? And I'm sure your rebuttal is, maybe Scott Fitterer takes care of it. Who signed Scott Fitterer's checks? David Tepper. David Tepper is an active participant in all of this. David Tepper will have the final say. It's very likely that Scott Fitterer is someone who will hand him candidates, and he'll be in there during the interviews, and that maybe David will listen to him. But at the end of the day, if David Tepper finds someone who is a short order cook like him, who sweats like him, and who dresses like crap like him, and those meatballs, that might end up being the next head coach here in Carolina. Now, typically, you go out and find somebody who's completely opposite of the coach that he's hired, but he's going to hire someone who he can relate to, and he feels like is going to be the right coach here in Carolina. And there's still an opportunity for David Tepper. As much as I dog David Tepper, he's still very early in all this. And really, if we're thinking about it, as far as the football side of things, this is the third year of David Tepper really having his people in place. The business side of things, I mean, we've seen the people that have left Tepper Sports and Entertainment. So that speaks for itself as well. It's still early. He can still figure things out as he learns to be an owner and listen and hire the right people and let them do their job. So there is still faith. I just don't trust him because he's a carpetbagging Yankee from Pittsburgh, and I'm from Charlotte originally, and I necessarily don't love all the transplants and carpetbagging Yankees that come down here and think that they're going to turn the city in their own image. Like, certainly come here, help embrace our city, help it grow, help it find other identities, but you don't own us. That's why I don't necessarily like David Tepper. And the whole basement fan comment, that stuff is at it. That's just ridiculous. But back to Nathan and his point of, do fans get too quick to jump off the ship? Absolutely. People have done that here with Matt Rhule. Okay, year one, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. I get it. And Josh Klein brought this up the other day. A lot of it stems from how they treated Cam Newton on the way out, where they talked about Matt Rhule saying that he wanted Cam to be here. And like Josh also said, what else is he going to say in that situation? You would love the honesty being like, well, actually, we'd like to find somebody else who I think fits what we want to do better with Joe Brady as their OC. But that's not what he said. He said he wants to work with Cam. And they have Honeywell sponsoring all this and basically sponsoring the drama of, will Cam stay? Will Cam go? And I thought that was absurd. The way they handled it was poor. And especially at the time where they allowed him to seek a trade, there was no trade to be had at that point in time. There was no quarterback money out there on the market. And as we've seen, the NFL doesn't really seem to be all interested in Cam Newton in his current state, which is unfortunate, but just the reality of the situation that was not made better by the Carolina Panthers. So how they handled that was poor. But they did bring him back last year. You got what you wanted. And how did that work out for you? Not great. It was fun 10 days, as I keep telling y'all. But still, I get why people might be upset about that. But at some point in time, you just got to get over it, right? Or are you just going to hold that grudge forever? 5-11. No one thought they were going to be good that season. Why people were mad every Sunday about Teddy Bridgewater, I don't understand at all. I get it. You lose close games. It sucks. It's 2020, the pandemic. It's a gut punch. You want something good in your life. You really shouldn't lean on the Panthers to be the only good thing in your life. And I understand that there's people out there that have connections with their parents and other things that make them love Panthers and really gives them hope on Sundays. It's just, at some point in time, you gotta have some perspective. And I'm not trying to sit here and lecture you. I'm just giving you my honest opinion as this is what we're doing here on the mailbag. I just don't feel like a lot of people gave Matt Rhule a chance. Like 5-11, didn't expect anything year one. Last year, starting off 3-0, and certainly the press conference quotes, they're not great. But as I keep trying to tell y'all, you can't take everything this man says seriously. Like, he's not good at the whole PR thing. What does he do on the field? Do they win? No, they're not winning right now. He's not out in the community like Ron Rivera because there's been a pandemic. He hasn't been able to go out in the community. And I would love to see him out there more often so that people can get to know him and see that he actually cares about the people in the city. And he's not just here to coach football, because Ron Rivera certainly made that the case. Well, Ron started off 2013, 1-3. And everyone wanted that man gone. They lost that week 2 game on the road in Buffalo. Josh Norman had his issues that day, and they wanted him gone. Then what happened? They won 8 straight. And they went on to go 12-4, be the number 2 seed, and unfortunately lost to Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers in a divisional round. They also had hope because Cam Newton was quarterback. And that is one of the biggest things that David Tepper, Matt Rhule, and even Scott Fitterer have gotten wrong. Is they don't have a quarterback that people can place their hopes in. People, for whatever reason, place their hopes on Matt Corral, which, hey, man, they finally drafted one. I just thought that was a little foolish, considering that teams just don't draft guys in the 3rd round and think that that's going to be their guy. We'll see how things pan out in Atlanta, but the Falcons stink this year. I'm telling you, they ain't going to sit there and bank on a 3rd round pick when they can have their pick of the litter in the 1st round from a year from now. That's my opinion. come in April when you look at Will Levis at Kentucky and you see what they got down there at Ohio State and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, who went out there and bailed Bama out again last weekend. You can't tell me that they would rather have Desmond Ridder, who most of the league didn't even want, and then they would rather have him than a first-round pick. Like, Cam was there. That is a big difference with what happened with Rivera, because people saw that, hey, Cam's really good. And is this coach going to waste Cam's potential in not his prime, but are we gonna waste years of Cam Newton because this guy doesn't know how to do things? Well, Ron got it figured out. You can't really say that for Matt Rhule. Like, are we worried about him wasting Baker? I don't know. I mean, Matt Corral, like, I can't say the same thing. So, yeah, I do think people are way too quick. We had Roman Harper on here who came on, and he was on some of those Rivera teams, who talked about how he didn't have any sort of judgment of Matt Rhule in year 1 and year 2, because what are the expectations really? I didn't think they're going to go to the playoffs either the last 2 years. You wanted to see more improvement last year, losing 7 straight games, now 8 straight games. That's not the positive momentum that we're hoping for. So it's a little bit of both. Yeah, people are way too quick to jump off the bandwagon, but also people are justified in their decision of how they feel about the team at this point in time. But there is still hope. Like, Tepper can figure it out, as much as I don't like him currently, but we'll see how it pans out down the road. All right, going to take a quick pass here on the show, then answer the rest of your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on Locked On Panthers. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's get back to your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show. This is from Dylan, who asks, why the sudden change of offensive philosophy? When Joe Brady was fired, Rhule said we needed to run the ball more. We selected the worst of the 3 big tackles in pass pro because of what he brings in run blocking. We brought in a great second option for running the ball. And finally, Rhule spent all offseason explaining how he's building a running offense. Then on Sunday, the run was all but abandoned despite my sour opinion of Rhule. I respect your aggressiveness. However, too many things are in place for a run-first offense to run all 13 times in a game. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Thank you, Dylan. And Dylan said this to me after Tuesday's show, and I guess that's on me. I felt like I did a good job explaining Rhule's thought process, at least trying to parse through whatever he was trying to tell us on Tuesday, or I guess on Monday during the day after press conference. Here, let's go back again. Matt Rhule, as we know, talked about getting to 56 pass completions and rush attempts per game, and thinking that is a magic number that you need to get to win. That is a Bill Parcells philosophy, very old school. As we know in the NFL today, like Matt Rhule says, the teams that have success in the late part of the season and in the playoffs are really good passing the ball. Look at Cincinnati last year, who went to the Super Bowl and took down Kansas City with Pat Mahomes, who've been to 4 straight AFC title games. Look at the Rams, who won the Super Bowl a year ago. Look at who did the Rams beat? San Francisco, can't really say that about them. But look at most of the teams. Buffalo. Look at most of the teams in the playoffs. They have outstanding quarterbacks, which then, in turn, they have an outstanding pass game. The Panthers did not have an elite pass game, as Matt Rhule likes to say, and because of the situation they were in last year with a bad offensive line that could not protect and a bad quarterback, the only way they're going to try and win games down the stretch was by trying to run the football. So that's where he was thinking. Now, you are absolutely right. A part of Icky coming here was he can set the tone. Like, pass protection, it's going to come along eventually. And we saw Charles Cross on Monday Night Football. Like, he had his issues against Bradley Chubb. It's going to take some time for him and Evan Neal as well, who we'll see this weekend playing right tackle for the Giants. It's going to take time for all 3 of those guys to figure it out. But Icky is here to help them run the football especially. And they brought in Deontay Foreman, who was really good in his steed last season for Derrick Henry, who was out in Tennessee. And Matt Rhule talked about being a downhill rushing team. They brought in a bigger center like Bradley Bozeman so that they could do that. And then they get on Sunday and they're talking about, oh, actually, we need to be, or Monday, he's talking about, yeah, we need to be more of a pass-first kind of team. Now, situationally, Sunday, the Panthers only ran 53 plays. And that's what Ben McAdoo said on Thursday, too, about why they didn't get some of those receivers in, why Christian McCaffrey was limited in the run game. They got behind, had so many 3 and outs. They were in 3rd down and longs, where by time they got clicking, they were down. And what they needed to do was throw the ball and not really spend too much time trying to run the football. Like, that's why they get in that situation. I do expect them to be a little bit more dedicated to the run, while also agreeing with Matt Rhule, like, hey, if you want to win in the league, you got to control the line of scrimmage first and foremost, whether you run the ball or in pass protection. 4 sacks, and what they did running the ball last week, just not good enough either way. But they need to be able to pass the ball and have success that way if they truly want to take that next level. And the thought, too, last season with Joe Brady was like they brought in like Sam Darnold to stretch the field. We saw that one time. We saw it from Baker on Sunday with Robbie Anderson, but we didn't really see that. They need to be able to stretch the field, especially when they have 6 wide receivers that are currently healthy, and now with Andre Roberts, who's more of a returner going on IR. They have plenty of weapons out there that they want to throw the ball to, plus Christian McCaffrey. So I get where the philosophy is at, and I agree with it. But the messaging, once again, not great from the head ball coach here in Carolina. Now over to Michael, who asks, who's one player on offense and one player on defense that you're thinking has to step up to get our first win? Another great week of content. Hashtag keep pounding. Thank you, Michael. Offensively, got to be Baker Mayfield. Joe Person from The Athletic wrote about it, I think on Thursday, about how Baker Mayfield, they always lost hope the season openers in Cleveland. Remember, the only time they had one until last Sunday was back in 2004. So he always lost the season opener, but they always bounced back in week 2 and 1. Baker Mayfield has got to play like he's played in those week 2s in prior years and find a way to bounce back for this team. Was not great in that first half. He has to get off to a great start, distributing the football to DJ, Christian McCaffrey, and all the other wide receivers and tight ends on this roster, and finding a way to figure out the protections and the communication and get that all together. Like, he's supposed to be leader of the quarter of this room, of this offense. He's supposed to be the guy who can be the difference between this team being a bad team and going to the playoffs this upcoming season. So this season. So Baker Mayfield has to be the one who steps up. Then defensively, Shaq Thompson. He's the leader of the defense. He's a captain. He's right there in the middle. The linebacker play last week was not good enough, and it needs to be better. They have to be able to tackle. He has to. I get it. He wasn't healthy. He was on PUP for all that time. But Shaq is one of the leaders on this team, and he's someone I think needs to step up if the Panthers want to win on Sunday against the Giants, especially in stopping Saquon Barkley. Because when Shaq was healthy last year, he was all over the field. We need to see more of that on Sunday afternoon. And then we'll go to Danny, who also asked about the linebacker, saying, do you still believe in linebackers? Too many missed tackles. Is there not anyone out there we can get? P.S. I still believe in this team. I still believe in this team too. I'm not ready to jump off ship. It's a work in progress. We'll see. Like, they didn't sign Corey Littleton or Damian Wilson to big time deals. So you can only expect so much from guys that they got on the cheap. Frankie Louvu, first time being a starter. Brandon Smith right now is injured, and he's been limited the last 2 weeks. Was not out there, was not active a week ago. Maybe he can make a difference down the road. So right now, the linebackers are still one of the weakest positions on the team, and the hope is that guys like Wilson, who's brought in here to be good against the run, and Littleton and even Louvu can step up and help out Shaq Thompson, and Shaq can, of course, get healthier. So we'll see how that pans out on Sunday and moving forward. Question from Percy. He asked, Julian, in the event that Matt Rhule does not do enough to save his job, do you believe that he and Scott Fitterer are mutually exclusive, or do you think that they are tied at the hip and Scott will be let go as well? No, I think it's definitely mutually exclusive here. A little bit different situation here in Carolina. Rhule was hired. Marty was here to basically be Tepper's babysitter and show him how things were run. And then Tepper got him out of town, brought in Scott Fitterer, who, of course, did not come into Matt Rhule. And we saw this offseason. It seemed like Scott really had more control over what was going on in the draft room and, of course, in the free agent signings, and that Matt has less of a say with that. I do not think they're tied together. If Matt Rhule fails this year, I think he's the only one fired, and that Scott will be a key part of trying to identify the next head coach, who David Tepper would then have to sign off on, because David Tepper will get the final say and will be an active participant in that coaching search. In New York, we have Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, a little bit different. If they both fail, they're both going to leave. In Las Vegas, the same thing with Josh McDaniel and Ziegler. If they both fail, they're both going to leave. I don't look at those two guys being tied together. But the next head coach who comes in, if there's a new head coach in 2023, him and Scott Fitterer, I think, would be tied together, considering that that's Fitterer's guy, and Scott would be entering his third season as a GM and really the second season as having complete roster control, and you would need to see some sort of impact from there on out. All right, Rod He says, you called the Panthers secondary their strongest position group after seeing the big pass interference by Henderson, JC being too grabby, and the Browns receivers seeming to be open all game. Should fans be concerned? It's just one game. I don't think so. I still think they can be a strength of this defense. JC Horn, this is said by Phil Snow on Thursday, that JC, he hasn't really been out there. He was out for the most of the season last year. Then he was on PUP to start training camp, and they had him come along slowly. One of the issues he had back at South Carolina was that he was too grabby. So he's still trying to get into his own here in the NFL. And there's a lot being asked of him to be the number one wide receiver and go up against Amari Cooper. Both of those penalties that we saw were them trying to defend Amari Cooper. I'm sorry, right now, Amari Cooper, better wide receiver than J.C. Horn is a corner and C.J. Henderson is a corner. Eventually, J.C. Horn is going to have to be good enough to stop those kind of guys. So we'll see. I'm not too concerned right now about the secondary. Jeremy Chin played good. He played okay. Xavier Woods is up there. It was a leading tackler on Sunday. So I think they'll be just fine. I don't think you should panic after 1 week. If you're panicking after 1 week, then you didn't really have any belief at all, in my opinion. Luke, he says, I'm trying to be patient, but at what point do we push the panic button on Derek Brown? I understand it was a tough assignment Sunday against probably the best guard duo in the league, but a clip of him getting pancaked doesn't look good. He's not quite as bad, but at times he does give off real Vernon Butler vibes. Am I being premature, or could this pick be a bust? I've said it multiple times. This is a massive year for Derek Brown and for the Panthers as well to figure out what they want to do with Derek Brown. If he plays well, then he'll get his fifth-year option. If he doesn't play well, then the Panthers will say, no thanks on that, and they'll sit there and see what he can do next season in his fourth and final year, likely as a Carolina Panther, if that's what they plan on doing. So you can go through the all-22 and you can find so many examples of guys getting embarrassed. Like Micah Pittman not Michael Pittman. What's the guy? What's the Dallas? Is it Micah something, whatever it is. I can't remember his name. Who's the Dallas Cowboys linebacker? Micah Parsons. He got like chipped on Sunday Night Football and it was all over the internet. And he was complaining about, oh, we got to get rid of these, blah, blah, blah. But it made him look silly. You can find so many plays out there that can make guys look silly and then kind of try and hone in on that. I don't know what the PFF numbers were for these guys. I'm sure they weren't great because the defense as a whole, especially him up front, they didn't do well enough. Phil Snow was even asked about gross mottos. He didn't do well enough. No one did well enough. Phil Hoskins apparently had like the worst grades of anybody out there, and he played like 20 snaps and way too many for a player like Phil Hoskins, who was a 7th round pick a year ago. And, it was one of those questions of whether he'd make the roster this season. So I have concern about Derek Brown. Are we pressing the panic button after 1 week? I know it's more than just 1 week. It's last 2 years. He's never going to be an interior pass rusher, but he has to be someone who can be better against the run. And as we've seen, the Panthers have stunk against the run since he's been there. So I don't know. We'll let it play out. Final question now from Kyle. Does Terrace Marshall have a shot at developing into a great receiver for this team, or is his time here fizzing out? It kind of feels like it's fizzing out. I know one of my bold predictions look, I'm just trying to throw stuff out there. Like, I don't know how much I don't really tell y'all things I don't believe, but I was just like, you know what? Why not? Let's be bold. Terrace Marshall probably, I don't think it's probably, definitely has the second most talented of any wide receiver on this team. Absolutely. And the injuries have really held him back. And he lost his job, basically. He lost his job to Shi Smith. So I don't know. We'll look and see what it looks like at wide receiver on Sunday. Laviska Shenault looks like he's going to be ready to go. Ben McAdoo said he looks good. They had 6 receivers up a week ago, and one of them, the only one who was inactive was Shenault. And now you have Andre Roberts, who is on the PUP list. Shi Smith's going to be the punt returner moving forward for at least the next 2 months. And then Chuba Hubbard's going to return kickoffs. And I had someone who's like brick hands Chuba Hubbard. I don't think Chuba's going to struggle returning kickoffs. Just not really great at when he's sitting there and catching it. When he has to run and do a route, that's when he has really issues moving and catching the football at the same time. I will be curious to see if Terrace Marshall's inactive. I don't have the inactive list. Well, actually, let's see. I actually do have it in front of me from a week ago. There's a lie. The inactives from a week ago were Shenault, Barno, Mays, Marquand McCall, Stephon Sullivan, and Aaron Mosby, who got called up from the practice squad or elevated from the practice squad. Shenault should be active and not go ahead. That takes the spot that we saw a loss from Andre Roberts. I still think Terrace Marshall will be active, but it's not looking good for him right now, considering that what Matt Rhule said, had they played Higgins and Marshall, Higgins would have been the first to come in. So Rashard Higgins is your number 4 wide receiver. Where does Shenault figure it? Is he your number 5? Is Terrace Marshall so far down the depth chart that he's number 6? And at some point in time, he's going to maybe be someone who's like, hey, get me out of here, man. These guys don't want to play me. I don't want to be here. I'm just guessing. Not saying that that's going to happen, but considering how, I guess, my generation acts, like that would absolutely be the case at some point in time if he does not get an opportunity out there. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag on Locked On Panthers. Participate in next week's edition of the Weekly Friday Mailbag, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. And again, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council and check out the show wherever you check it out on your podcast feed. Just rate, review, and subscribe. And also check us out over on YouTube. Just subscribe to the Locked On YouTube channel and be sure to, all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, though, enjoy your weekend. I'm headed up to Boone. Going to be an absolute madhouse with College game day there. Don't think I'm going to the game, unfortunately, but whatever. I'll find other things to do and hang out, just see the game day atmosphere. Never been to a game at App State, so going to go do that for the weekend. But I'll be back Sunday, of course. And again, 6 p.m., hoping to have our episode out on the podcast feed. YouTube, we'll see how long it takes for it to download, but it should be out there by 7 o'clock. At the latest. So be sure to be ready to check that out here on the show. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I will talk to you all on Sunday evening or Monday morning, whenever you listen to the show. Goodbye.